Hello everyone, welcome to Wicked.west.books. My name is Meg West, and today I'm doing a wrap-up for every book I've read back since the end of February, not including the ones that I've read this month, because I'm going to go ahead and put those in their own video, because it's mostly been books from one series, and I also kind of have a slight announcement to go with that, so that will be next week. This pile comes up above my knees. I couldn't... You saw the thumbnail, right? It didn't fit all in frame. So I don't actually know which order I read these in. I wasn't exactly keeping track like I should have been. And so, they're not going to be in the order that I read them. And I'm going to go ahead and put the series together even if I didn't read them together so that it would go through just a little bit quicker. So I'm going to go through this pile I've got here and also the audiobooks and the Kindle books that I borrowed from the library as this goes along. The first two books on this list, I reread An Ember and the Ashes and I read A Torch Against the Night. I bought the Kindle edition, I think last year it was on sale, and I finally got around to reading them because book 3 just came out and I wanted to be caught up for it. And book 3 is not available at the library yet, so I haven't read it yet. I really, really want to. The series is a young adult fantasy novel series that is set in a world where there are two main kinds of people for the story, and you have the scholars who have been oppressed by the marshals, and of course the marshals just want to rule the world. And of course Ember and the Ashes is the story about one scholar meeting one marshal, and unlike the rest of their kingdoms, they manage to get along and like each other, and neither one of them likes the fact that the marshals are in such charge of the scholars. So they're trying to put a stop to that. The next one is 3 rereads followed by a new book in the series for me. Written and read A Murder of Crows, Visions in Silver. I also read Marked in Flesh, all by Anne Bishop. This is her other series. It is a adult urban fantasy series that is set not necessarily in our world, because in our world we would still have, in most urban fantasies, we are still the predominant people, just normal people, and then you have the vampires and werewolves and everything sprinkled in. In this one, the vampires, the werewolves, the others rule the world, and we just live in it. This is one of my favorite authors, and I really enjoy this series. It's a really unique take on urban fantasy, and still got, I think, one more book by Meg Corbin, and then there are 2 new books that are out after Meg Corbin's 5-book series, I think. So still got some more catching up to do with this one, but I'm a little bit closer. After that, I read a couple of my favorite books from the Dragon Riders of Pern books, and a couple that I had very little memory of, so Pern. First ones I did were Dragon Song and Dragon Singer. These are the first 2 books in the Harper Hall trilogy. The 3rd book follows a different character, and I don't like him as much as Meneley. I related to her immensely in high school. Not quite so much now, but immensely in high school, and I still absolutely love her and her story, and these are a couple of my favorite books in the series, and you can reasonably read these without spoiling the rest of the series. I also picked up the Master Harper of Pern, which follows the story of the Master Harper of Pern, Robinson, from the time he was born up until about the same time that the first book in the series is, so it doesn't spoil anything after the series, and it gives you a decent setup of the world before that first book if you wanted it, instead of jumping into the world in kind of the middle of the story. It is, however, the only book that focuses on Robinson as the main character. I also read The Dolphins of Pern, which I kind of have to after the Master Harper of Pern, because that's about the same time that the dolphins start talking to people again, because they were, of course, genetically modified when they were moved to Pern to be able to speak to humans and help them out in the ocean and stuff, so I wanted to just get back into that, and it was really fun to do that. Another trilogy that was a complete reread for me was Angel Fall, World After, and End of Days by Susan E. This trilogy takes place in a slightly futuristic, post-apocalyptic world where the angels have come out of heaven to take back the earth, and they're not very nice about it. This is one of my favorite trilogies. I really enjoy the entire thing. It is an instant romance, and it is a little bit silly, but you do have a kick-ass female character who, just doesn't need a man, but can accept the help when it's offered, and just their pairing is really great. It's an equal amount of rescuing rescuing each other instead of just having a person in distress the entire relationship. I finally got around to reading my copy of A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I loved this book. I loved it a lot. I did not do the audiobook. I wanted to do the audiobook. I'd heard great things about the voice for the audiobook, but the book was really fantastic even without it. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the second book. This book follows Monty as he goes on his tour of the kingdom with his best friend, who he is in love with, and his sister, who he isn't quite as fond of. And it was so much fun to read, and it's got a slightly magical, not realistic note to the entire thing, and it was really fun, and I'm looking forward to the second book, which should be his sister's, if I remember correctly, and that's going to be a lot of fun too. I put down everything to read this book when this book came out, because I love the trilogy, and this book was great. Obsidium by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the final book in the Illuminae files, and really I hope that they find some reason to go back into this universe and write together, because these books are just awesome. The first book was great, the second book was absolutely amazing. I loved Gemina so much. And Obsidium, it's up there too. It was great, and really, I would love to see more in this world. This is, of course, the conclusion to the trilogy, so I don't want to tell you too much about what it's about, because that would just spoil the first two books. Go back a few months, my husband's pick for our buddy read was The Aeronauts Windlass by Jim Butcher. Wasn't too enthusiastic to read this book because I am kind of torn when it comes to Jim Butcher. His Dresden Files, I don't find entertaining at all. They're not bad, they're just not for me. And his Codex Alera series is fantastic, one of my favorite series. This one falls about in the middle. It was much better than Dresden, and I found it entertaining. It is a steampunk kind of story, and basically chaos happens. That's really all I can really go into the plot line. This one I think is better to go in just blind, but chaos is the basic plot point for the story. And of course, this book came out, so I read it to go with the rest of the series. A Court of Frost and Starlight. It is a very short book in the series, and it just basically follows what happens to Feyre right after the end of the trilogy. I think it's like a year later when this starts up or something like that. Wasn't blown away by it. Didn't hate it, but I wasn't blown away like I was with the second one, like everyone was with the second one. Just last month, was the Booksplosion Book of the Month, which is the second book in this series, and I did have to reread the first one in order to remember enough to go into the second one, and also now I really want the third one. And those books are And I Darken and Now I Rise by Kiersten White. This is, of course, the series that is Vlad the Impaler retold if Vlad had been born a woman. And during this time, women weren't very high up on the food chain, but a lot of manages. And the way that she ends book 2 really makes me want to go into book 3, because she ends it in such a position of power. And I know vaguely the timeline for Vlad Tepish, the Vlad the Impaler, and what he went through, and I know where he ends up, so I know where she's going to end up, and just to see from a reader's point of view how that's going to happen, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. This next book, I'd heard so much hype about it. It got a movie deal before it even came out, and it was advertised to me as the Zutara pairing that we never. It made me want to read it a whole lot faster than I already did. And that book is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I hope I said that right. I think I did, but this book series has the potential to be absolutely amazing. This is the first book she's ever written, and I can kind of tell that, but also my disappointment, I think, comes more from the fact that because it was sold to me as the Zutara pairing, that we didn't get the first 100 pages, they don't even meet. So that was a little bit irritating to me, because I just wanted them to get together And then while their relationship definitely has the moodiness and tension that go between Katara and Zuko, it seemed a little bit condensed, and she's got the entire series to go through that kind of storyline with them, and it just felt really condensed in this. The magic system was great. I'm looking forward to a whole lot more with that, especially with the way that this book ended, and just the way that they go forward from here is going to be really interesting. But I think that the success of this book, to me at least, to me obviously, is going to depend on just how good the books continue to be getting, because this is a good beginner book. I would love to see more from the series. And if you haven't seen anything with that author, she's adorable. I love her. Some of the videos from her, like when she first sees her book and she starts crying, and when it goes onto the New York Times bestseller list, she's adorable. For the rest, I have to continue to consult Cthulhu because he is my journal for this year. So let's find out the ebooks and Kindle books that I don't own a physical copy of and thus can't remember just for the video. 2 months ago's Booksplosion was The Earth, My Butt, and Other Big Round Things by Carolyn Mackler. This book came out a while ago and then was rewritten a little bit to make it more modern because it just got a sequel a month ago. 2 months ago now. I don't remember when exactly. My timing for the last couple of months is a little bit off. But yes, it was a good story. It was entertaining. It's not my kind of thing. Contemporary is probably one of my least favorite genres to read in that I do read in. So not my favorite thing in the world, but it was entertaining, and I will eventually pick up the second book. So looking forward to that. I finally got Burn Bright from the library. This is the newest book in the Patricia Briggs Alpha and Omega series, and it was a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of new characters that are in Bran's little pack. Little pack? It's probably a very big pack. There's just not a lot of characters that have been introduced to us so far. And it was a lot of fun to go through that and read things, and you get to meet some really interesting characters, and then some betrayal happens, and I saw it coming by a little bit, the betrayal, and who it was, and I really wished that I had been wrong. I mentioned it a couple of videos ago when we had a discussion about it, but I hadn't actually put it in a wrap-up. I read with my husband A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. We listened to the audiobook for it, and I think it was the audiobook mostly that caused my slight dislike of the main female character. My husband says that there's a different narrator for the second book, so hopefully that gets better. I think that if I had actually read a physical copy instead of listening to the audiobook, I would have loved Lila. I would have absolutely loved her, and I loved Kel. This was a fun story. There were some bad things that happened, but it was a fun story, and if you want to know more about it, I'll put a link to that video where my husband and I talked about it and our feelings on it down below. Okay, and that is it. I finally made it through it. I think I've got 20 minutes of raw footage that needs to be edited now, but I finally made it through. There are, I think, a couple more books on that, but they tie into almost everything else that I've read this month, so next week I will make a video on the other books and kind of make a kind of announcement of where I'm going to be on one day, because I'm really excited for it. I'm gonna go to another book signing, and fun. Yes, that's it. That's all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and feel free to leave any comments down below. I really like to respond to comments, so if you have anything to say on any of these books or your reading progress for the year so far, I would love to hear from you down below. Apart from that, I will get back to posting videos every Wednesday. There might be a couple days where it's a day late or something. New job, I'm still trying to figure out the timing for this. I got off early today, so video. But we'll figure out how to go forward from here with this new job where I work on Wednesdays, which hasn't happened in 5 years. It's weird. So yes, that's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next week with a new video. Have a wicked day.